Today, we're going to talk about flippers. A flipper is somebody who buys a property and makes money fixing it, right? So the proper definition is flipping is a term used to describe purchasing an asset and quickly reselling it for a profit. So what's that mean? Number one, flippers are looking for, their target is they want to find distressed properties or people with a problem. So first, we need to look at that. It's like, okay, if I'm flipping a house, what am I looking for? You got to determine what your target is. So what we're looking for when flipping a house is people with financial problems. They might have lost their job or they just can't afford to make their payment and they're losing their house, maybe pre-foreclosure, going into foreclosure, things like that. Like they're losing the house, can't afford it. Most of the time that property is going to be distressed because they don't have the money to fix it anyways. So that's number one. Number two is somebody in divorce. A lot of times in divorce, people need to sell the house because it's jointly owned. And a lot of times they just want to sell it quickly, convenient. And also sometimes they just want to screw their spouse. Like they just want to get rid of it. So that's a problem there. People in divorce are stressed out. The problem they have is they need to sell their house and there could be issues in their relationships that is their problem that you can help them solve and just buy their house from them. Third I see is people that inherited a house. So think about this. Say Joe's out there working 9 to 5, paycheck to paycheck and can barely make his bills. He inherits a house from his parents, which most people think inheriting a house is a good thing, but he inherits his house, right? And what comes with that is all the taxes, all the utilities, all the insurance, but more importantly, most houses that you inherit haven't been updated for like 30 years. So now if he wants to sell this house, he's got to come up with 30, 40 grand to fix the house to even get it ready for the market. So a lot of times people inheriting a home is actually a really big problem for them because they inherit it, but now they just inherited a problem, especially if they're paycheck to paycheck and don't have a lot of financial means, right? Other type of people are landlords. A lot of people try to be landlords. They might have 1 or 2 properties and haven't built out processes. They rent to the wrong people. They can't get people to pay them rent, things like that. So we call it a tired landlord, like a landlord that has issues and does not know how to properly vet tenants, manage them, rent places out, things like that. So sometimes landlords are a target there. Pre-probate, a recent death of an employee not filed for probate. So probate leads. Hoarder houses is a big one. So a big problem in this space, let me take a step back. Think about it like this. If you own a house and it's filled, like I bought houses that are just completely filled with like columns that you walk down and you live on the street and you know all the neighbors. Do you want to list your house on the market and have all your neighbors walking through your house, seeing how you live? There's nothing wrong with being a hoarder. Like everybody's got their thing, but a lot of times hoarders, that's their problem. They're embarrassed and they don't want to sell their house publicly. And a lot of times with hoarders too, you get into the house and you find all these repairs that need done because their house has been stacked with stuff all through the house for years and you can't see what's behind it. So a lot of times in hoarders' house, especially in Pittsburgh, because I see their foundations are always usually cracked, not because they're a hoarder, just because they didn't notice it and were able to fix it in time because the whole wall, especially the basement's been covered. So hoarders are one there. I purchased properties also at a discount from people that just wanted convenience. They're like, hey, you know what? I'm moving from Pittsburgh to Washington to go live with my daughter. I don't want to list it. I'm willing to give you a discount. They gave a medium discount though. It's not like a 70% ARV discount. They're like, I'm willing to give you a discount to just not have to deal with anything. So I purchased it because I buy them for rentals. That might have been like 85% ARV, maybe 90% instead of 70%. But that is also a distressor depending on the dispos, right? They may not be a huge fit for a flipper because a lot of times their properties aren't beat up. And then last is like, say someone lost their job and just can't afford the payment, situations like that. So flippers are looking for distressed properties and people with problems. So what we're looking at here, so we can look at 4 pillars of motivation. So what are the 4 pillars of motivation? And when we're looking at distressed sellers, like how can we gauge if they have motivation? So number 1, we look at condition. Does the property need repairs? Number 2 is the timeline. Do they want to sell fast or slow? Number 3, motivation. Do they have problems? Like if they can't afford to fix something, they have a problem. They inherited a home, can't afford it, or if they're a hoarder, things like that, they have motivation. Number 4, price. Is it somebody that's like everything's for sale for the right price? Or, hey, I just want to get rid of this thing. The house is worth $200,000. I owe $100,000 on the mortgage. I want to walk away with $10K. So flippers are going to look at 2 things. They're going to look at what are all the problems? And then when you're talking with someone, you can gauge their motivation based on the 4 pillars. So if you look at, you're talking with them, they say they have a problem, they inherited a home, can't afford it, boom, motivation. Then if you ask them, okay, well, how fast do you want to sell? And they say, I don't know, like 3 to 6 months. I'm debating on fixing it myself or flipping it. Okay, timeline is not a motivator. Condition's a motivator. Motivation, if they say that also, I could go either way. It's like, they're medium. And it's like, well, okay, what's the best price you can do? And then that's the 4th motivator. So those are the things that our flipping houses are looking for. And then back to what the actual flipper does. A flipper is looking to purchase a property, fix it, and sell it for a profit. So in a sense, flippers are creating money out of thin air. So let's talk about this first, ARV. So after repair value is the estimated value of a property after completed reservations, not in its current condition, right? So what's that mean in layman's terms? The property after repair value is, say, an even number, $100,000 property. If it would be worth $100,000 when it was fixed up, but it needs $20,000 worth of work, that ARV would be $80,000. So it's $100,000 minus repairs equals ARV. This is very important, especially in the flipping game. So with real estate wholesalers, this is important. Flippers, it's even more important. Because flippers need to buy this property properly at the right price. They need to estimate how much it's going to cost to repair and build in profit. And the profit has to be higher because you're putting a lot of money out of pocket and a lot of time out of pocket. A wholesaler is not really putting that much time or money out of pocket because they're wholesaling the property, so they might have a couple $100 out of pocket. Flippers could have a couple $100,000 out of pocket, and it's crucial to think it through. We'll talk about a couple different scenarios. If you make the wrong purchase and you don't buy it right, you could lose big time. I've talked to some people flip the house. They're like, yeah, I flipped the house. Took me 6 months and I barely got out of it by breaking even. So think about that. Would you want to put up $200,000 or $300,000, 6-month effort to make no money? Everybody's going to fail. Everybody's going to learn. Try to do it once. Better yet, try to learn from someone else's mistake. Number 2, repairs. That is one thing that gets especially inexperienced investors all the time. So you can buy this house for 70% ARV, and which we'll go into 70% ARV in 1 second. You can buy the house properly, and if you misgauge the repairs and don't have a buffer, it could just blow you out of the water. For example, if you go through a property and you miss something like knob and tube wiring, you may have to rewire the whole house even to just get insurance. I bought a property that had low voltage wiring through the entire house. So low voltage means it's not like regular wiring through the entire house. We had to completely pull every single piece of wire in the whole house and replace it. Luckily, I have a good team, so it was called out. But if it was my first property, I might not have noticed that. And what that would mean is if I had like medium profit margins and then something like that popped up, that's an extra $10,000. What if I only had like $10,000, $15,000 profit? Now we got to fix that. Now we're breaking even. So it's things like that. It's things like not expecting once you break into the wall to find problems behind there. A lot of times that happens also. We get into a construction project and I get the phone call. It's like, hey, Brad, you got to stop over here. I go over, we start looking at it. I look and it's behind the wall, it's like something hammered. Even like plumbing issues, like stacks all the time. We break out walls, they're always rusted. In the basement, sometimes we'll rip out walls and then we see the foundations are hammered. Water problems, I see a lot. We do a lot of French drains. I had one property that I bought and I thought the foundation was salvageable and we actually had to replace and rip out the entire foundation. I was not planning on doing that when I bought the property. And luckily, I buy and hold properties, so it didn't matter because I keep them as rentals and the property appreciates. But if I was flipping it, that could be a problem. So last thing is we're going to look at, okay, so a flipper wants to buy the property. They want to pay 70% ARV. So what that means is they're looking at this $100,000 property. If it needs $20,000 in repairs, that takes it down to $80,000. And then the flipper can only give 70% of that. So it's like $56K. And the reason is you have to budget for a 30% profit margin, and maybe you'll make 20% depending on what pops up. So in a nutshell, a flipper is somebody who wants to buy a property from someone who has a problem, put their time and money into the house and fix it, which creates a profit. In a sense, like I said, they are creating money out of thin air.